Hey, welcome back to J.P.'s World of Wrestling. Okay, so today I've got some time on my hands today because right now it's Sunday afternoon. I just got home from church. My wife is out and having lunch with an old friend of hers, and so I've got some time on my hands. So, what am I talking about? Well, I thought I would take this time to talk about my viewpoint on wrestling shoot interviews. And the reason for that is I don't know. I just think that there's some things that are kind of constantly on my mind when I'm watching some of these shoot interviews, and I do watch a lot of them. Um, but I think my main issue is, a question that looms in my mind, like, who do you believe? A lot of these shoot interviews from wrestlers, a lot of times, and sometimes it's like not even an actual wrestler per se. It's somebody that's worked a long time in the wrestling business when they work behind the scenes. But a lot of times they'll tell stories about somebody or they'll completely bury a certain guy. They'll tell a story like, oh, this guy said this to me and, he done me wrong back in 1986 or whatever. But then they go and talk to that guy in a shoot interview. That guy say, no, that's not what happened. Here's what really happened. So it's the point where it's like, I don't know who to believe. I don't know who's more trustworthy. I'm sure that to some degree, both sides of the story are true in that individual's mind, and that's probably the way they remember it. But and as much as I love, Hulk Hogan, I've also heard from some of his peers that as good as he is, sometimes he's not the best at telling truthful stories, which I don't know. That may or may not be true. I don't know, but like I'll listen to podcast. Like sometimes I'll listen to Eric Bischoff's podcast, and sometimes he'll respond to criticism from somebody like, say, Bret Hart. Well, Bret Hart will say, "Oh, Eric Bischoff ruined my career, and Eric Bischoff did this, and he promised me this, and yada yada yada." Well, then Eric Bischoff on his podcast will say, "Well, that's not exactly what happened. Here's what actually happened. He came in and we told him this and this and this. We promised to pay him this and this and this, and then we just didn't get the results or whatever." So I don't know. Do I believe Eric Bischoff or do I believe Bret Hart? I don't know. I don't know either one personally, and so then, like, we'll say the Honky Tonk Man will go on a shoot interview and he'll tell a story about, oh, well, Brutus the Barber Beefcake said this to me, and oh, this guy said this about Hulk Hogan, and whatever. So then they'll go and talk to the other guy, the Honky Tonk Man was talking about, or they'll go to Brutus Beefcake, and Brutus Beefcake will say, well, that's not true. This is how this really happened. So it's like there's conflicting stories, like, all the time. And so that's why whenever I see a shoot interview where somebody is just burying somebody else, I kind of take it with a grain of salt and like, okay, but is that really what went on? Or especially if it's somebody that's no longer with us and is not here to defend themselves and say, no, that's not true, that's not what happened. So the bottom line is, who do you believe? Now I've said on this channel before, a lot of times I will watch or I'll listen to Ted DiBiase's podcast. Everybody's got a pod, just because he just basically just tells like old stories of the road, and they talk about certain areas of his career, and he'll just talk about that from his perspective. And then there's the Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, where he'll talk about things that happened according to his point of view. Somebody else might say, "Oh no, Bruce, that's not true. That's not what happened." Well, Bruce isn't saying, "Okay, that never happened." He's saying, "I wasn't there, so I didn't witness that happening." But of the things where I was there, I could tell you from my point of view, this is what happened. So the bottom line is there's so many guys that go on these shoot interviews and they'll start saying stuff, and then you're left going, okay. Okay, for example, the big rivalry between Vince Russo and Jim Cornette. Both of those guys hate each other, especially Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette says, "No, the Attitude Era was my idea," and then Vince Russo will say, "No, the Attitude Era was my idea." I don't. Okay, who do you believe? Who do you believe? And then Sergeant Slaughter says that he discovered the Undertaker. Bruce Pritchard says he discovered the Undertaker. Hulk Hogan says he discovered the Undertaker. Who do you believe? Who really discovered the Undertaker? I don't know. Well, from the Undertaker's point of view, he was sitting at home and he got a call from Vince McMahon, and Vince McMahon said, "This is the Undertaker." And then the Undertaker replied with, "Oh, well, yeah, this is the Undertaker." So, I don't know. The truth is I wasn't there for any of it. I'm not in the business. I'm not in the industry. So I'm not saying you shouldn't watch shoot interviews. I'm saying that I watch shoot interviews with the perspective of, okay, well, this is this guy's side of the story. And now I want to hear the other guy's side of the story. But I will say this. Lately, I've been watching shoot interviews from Al Snow. And I have to say that Al Snow has the most masterfully worded perspective on the wrestling business. And the way he puts things, he's very articulate, he's very intelligent, and everything he says is 100% correct. Because he doesn't tell you, stuff that happened. He doesn't bury guys like that. But when he talks about what is wrong with the wrestling industry today and comparing it to the wrestling business of, years past, he's exactly right in what he says. And he's extremely articulate. And if I was to recommend anybody as far as shoot interview goes, I would recommend watching the Al Snow shoot interviews, because he doesn't change his story at all. He doesn't change his perspective. Like, different people have asked him same questions, and he's answered them the same exact way. So I just, I enjoy listening to it because I believe that I agree with everything he says as far as what's wrong with the wrestling industry today. Now, I typically, although I find him entertaining, I typically don't listen to Jim Cornette, just because personally I don't care about his perspective on politics or religion. That is not why I listen to wrestling podcasts. I want to hear that person's thoughts on wrestling, and only wrestling. I don't need to. It's the same reason why I won't watch speeches from politicians or whatever, because I don't care. I have my own viewpoint. I have my own point of view. Nobody's going to change my mind. But I do appreciate Jim Cornette's perspective on the wrestling industry today, because I also agree with him. Most of the time, I do agree with Jim Cornette, but I won't listen to his podcast. I'll listen to snippets on YouTube of different things that he has said about different guys. I'll listen to those because he's just entertaining to listen to, but I can't listen to full episodes of Jim Cornette's podcast, just because I can't listen to him talk about politics and people of faith. I don't like to listen to that. But that's just me, again. So anyway, that is my perspective on shoot interviews. I reiterate the question, who do you believe? As far as shoot interviews go. Who do you believe? Maybe there's snippets of truth in stuff everybody says, or maybe one person's lying completely. I don't know these people personally, so I don't know. I couldn't tell you. But anyway, that is going to do it for this video. I think you know where I'm going next. If you're new here, go ahead and like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.